The sterile, almost oppressive quiet of Dr. Albright's orthopedic waiting room was abruptly violated by the strident, insistent ring of my mobile phone. Its harsh, electronic melody cutting through the low murmur of daytime television and the shuffling of old magazines, instantly seizing the attention of the few other patients present, whose glances felt like physical weights. I glanced at the display. It was Viviana, my only daughter. Her calls were infrequent and almost universally transactional, rarely bearing the warmth of genuine connection. Yet a flicker of hope, the stubborn, resilient hope of a mother, always made me answer. "Viviana, darling, is everything all right?" I asked, instinctively lowering my voice, pressing the cold plastic of the phone against my ear. My name is Serafina Vance, and until this moment, at 73 years old, recently widowed, I believed I was simply a vulnerable woman managing the remnants of a quiet, unremarkable life. Viviana's voice, when it finally spoke, was entirely devoid of warmth, clipped and unnervingly efficient, sounding less like a daughter and more like a corporate liquidator delivering a final, brutal assessment. "Mom, listen to me closely. I'm calling you from the airport. Dorian and I are leaving for Europe tomorrow. First flight out. We've secured the investment we needed." She paused, a dramatic, pregnant silence calculated to maximize impact. "And to finalize the funding, I've already sold the Cedar Haven." The Cedar Haven, my heart, still fragile from the loss of Silas, my late husband, 6 months prior, lurched violently, a cold, sickening lurch that stole my breath. That was the lake house, the one Silas and his father built, the one piece of land that held every memory of our life together, the sanctuary I had retreated to after Silas's sudden passing. "Sold it? Viviana, what are you talking about? You can't sell it. That house was placed in a non-liquidating familial trust, explicitly designated for my lifetime use, you know that? You are only the executor of the estate, not the beneficiary of the trust." My voice, initially a panicked whisper, rose in volume, drawing a few concerned looks from the reception desk, but I didn't care. The betrayal was too sharp, too immediate. Viviana let out a condescending, theatrical sigh, the sound grating and familiar. "Oh, honestly, Mother, always so dramatic. Yes, I sold it. Dorian's lawyers found a very convenient and perfectly legal loophole in that archaic trust document. Something about financial necessity for the immediate family and diminished capacity of the primary beneficiary, given your, well, situation after father passed. Don't worry, it was a quick court order, all legal and above board. We closed the sale yesterday. Cash deal. A wonderful price, actually. Much more than you'd ever get for it in its current condition." The sheer audacity of her statement, the casual cruelty of citing my grief and age as a legal pretext for theft, left me momentarily speechless, a cold knot forming in my stomach. She continued, steamrolling over my silence. "I deposited $60,000 into your account this morning. That's your share, 25% of the net profits, after we deducted the necessary legal fees, of course, for the complex injunction and the closing costs. That should be plenty for your small apartment and your utilities, assuming you're prudent. We're taking the rest. It's what Silas would have wanted, for us to finally achieve our potential, right? We need this capital for Dorian's new venture in Milan. We leave at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't call me. I'll be busy packing. Goodbye, Mother." And then the line went dead, the aggressive dial tone echoing the finality of her action and the brutal efficiency of her disregard. I sat there, the phone heavy and useless in my hand, staring blankly at a faded print on the wall. $60,000. For a house worth nearly $500,000, a house that represented 5 decades of memory and sacrifice. My own daughter, Viviana, the one I had poured every resource into, funding her vanity boutique, the Velvet Whisk, had not just stolen my home, she had insulted my intelligence and dismissed my grief. But as the shock receded, something else took its place. A cold, hard, familiar clarity. The kind I hadn't felt since I was the chief operations officer of Vance and Sterling Acquisitions 30 years ago, before I retired to support Silas's quiet life. My eyes narrowed. Viviana had just made a monumental mistake. She believed I was the poor, frail widow she had painted to the court. She had no idea who Silas truly was, and more importantly, she had no idea the fortress he had built around me. I rose slowly, deliberately, reclaiming my cane not for support, but as a deliberate prop in my performance of frailty. I calmly informed the receptionist I needed to reschedule, walking out into the sharp autumn air with a controlled, rigid focus. I reached the anonymity of my car, settled into the driver's seat, and before starting the engine, I looked straight into the camera of my memory, the fury fueling my resolve. Comment below where you are watching this from and what time it is right now. The rage that was building inside me was no longer hot and emotional. It was cool, strategic, and incandescent, tempered by the memory of Silas's final, cryptic instruction. I drove directly back to the modest, rented apartment we kept, the same apartment Viviana considered pathetic, and went straight to the old, solid oak armoire in the master bedroom. I pulled out the bottom drawer, reaching for the loose hinge I had ignored for years, and lifted the false bottom. There, secured in a small, oiled canvas bag, was a single, heavy, unmarked binder. Silas had handed it to me the night before his sudden heart attack. "For you, Serafina," he had said, his eyes twinkling with a secret, deeply amused knowledge. "If the wolves ever come calling, open this. You'll find they've built your fortress for you." Silas Brooks, the man the world knew as a retired transit authority supervisor, was, in fact, an absolute genius of quiet, long-term strategic investment. I pulled the binder out, its weight reassuring, and opened it. The first page was a beautifully printed corporate letterhead, Aegis Crest Holdings, LLC. The sole shareholder listed was Serafina Vance Brooks. The holding company, incorporated and operational for 12 years, held ownership not just of the lake house, which was quietly transferred out of the flawed trust and into the LLC's portfolio 3 years ago, but of 3 massive commercial properties, a diverse portfolio of tech stock, and, most satisfyingly, the entire 8-story building where Viviana's luxury bakery, the Velvet Whisk, was located. Silas had not been an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He had been a master architect of hidden, generational wealth, creating a financial structure so layered and protected that Viviana's fraudulent court order was legally meaningless. Her injunction had targeted an empty, defunct trust. The real property had been secured long ago. The true value of the portfolio dwarfed the measly $60,000 she had left me. My next call was not to my distraught daughter, but to Mr. Calloway, the name listed in the binder as Lead Counsel Asset Protection. Calloway, a legend in trust law, answered on the second ring, his voice sharp and professional even at a late hour. "Mr. Calloway, this is Serafina Brooks, Silas's widow. I believe my daughter has just tried to liquidate one of Aegis Crest's primary assets, citing my diminished capacity. I'm sending you the binder. I need you to confirm my full authority, and then we begin." My daughter believes she has nothing to fear. She is about to learn that her father and I prepared for this moment her entire life. I began dictating the quiet, devastating strategy I had instantly formulated. A plan built on silence, strategic delay, and the crushing weight of legal consequence. Mr. Calloway, a man whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was clearly well earned, sat across from me in his immense mahogany-paneled office the following morning. The air thrummed with the kind of subdued power that only vast, untouchable wealth can generate. He had spent the night dissecting the Aegis Crest Holdings documents, and his expression, usually impassive, held a distinct note of admiration. "Mrs. Brooks," he began, resting his manicured hands on the pristine binder. "Your late husband, Silas, was not merely prudent, he was an absolute genius. The corporate architecture he created is virtually unassailable. Your daughter, Viviana, and her husband, Dorian, filed an injunction against a shell trust, the Brooks-Vance Family Trust, that has been legally stripped of its assets for over 3 years. Her sale of the Cedar Haven to the new buyers, a Mr. and Mrs. Denton, is, on paper, a sale of property she did not legally own. It is a textbook case of fraud and misappropriation of funds, not just a breach of trust." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the meticulous outline of the Aegis Crest structure he had drawn up on a whiteboard. "And she believes she received $300,000 for the house, netting her $240,000 after she skimmed the $60,000 for me and inflated her legal fees?" Calloway smiled faintly, a cold, lawyerly expression. "Actually, the Millers paid $500,000. Viviana and Dorian defrauded you of 88% of the proceeds, citing spurious costs. They deposited the $440,000 into a joint corporate account they control. They are currently on a plane to Milan, convinced they have secured their future." This new layer of deception, the true sale price, stung with a fresh wave of indignity, but it only strengthened my resolve. "Good. We will not alert them. Mr. Calloway, this is the plan. And it is non-negotiable. We do not file a counter-injunction in the open court. We do not stop the sale. If we stop the sale now, Viviana will know we have superior knowledge, and she will simply hide the misappropriated funds and vanish. We need her to live out her delusion of success, to spend every dollar she stole, to dig her own financial grave." Calloway leaned back, his eyes sharp with professional curiosity. "You want to execute a silent corporate maneuver, a strategic delay of consequence." "Precisely," I confirmed, leaning forward. "Immediately, before the Denton buyers can officially record their deed, we execute an internal transfer within Aegis Crest. We use the holding company's authority to nullify the old trust entirely and transfer the Cedar Haven deed from its current, temporary location directly into the most secure tier of the Aegis Crest portfolio. It's an administrative cleanup, invisible to the public record, but legally definitive. The Dentons will believe they own the house. Viviana will believe she sold it. But in reality, Aegis Crest, I, will own it, unencumbered." "Brilliant, Mrs. Brooks," Calloway conceded, tapping his pen against the desk. "We create a legal fog. Viviana is only liable for the misappropriation of the $440,000, and when the Dentons eventually try to move in, Aegis Crest will refuse them access, citing the pre-existing, non-disclosed internal lien and the title defect caused by Viviana's fraudulent injunction against a defunct trust. The Dentons will immediately demand their $500,000 back. Since the transfer of the funds went directly to Viviana and Dorian's joint account, they will be solely liable for the total repayment. They will be facing a $500,000 lawsuit the moment they return, and they will have spent most of the funds by then." I nodded, satisfied. "That is the necessary consequence, but we apply the pressure immediately. While they are in the air, I want you to initiate the second phase. The squeeze on the velvet whisk." I presented him with the documents relating to the commercial building where Viviana's luxury bakery was located. Silas owned this entire 8-story structure, registered under a subsidiary of Aegis Crest. Viviana's lease is up for renewal next month. We will not offer her a renewal. Instead, an anonymous property management arm of Aegis Crest will offer her a punitive month-to-month tenancy, increasing the rent by 50%, citing market realignments and planned structural review. This keeps her in business. She has to work to pay the debt, but it creates acute, inescapable financial anxiety. She must be busy, frantic, and desperate when she realizes she is ruined. "A subtle masterstroke, Mrs. Brooks," Calloway said, his admiration now entirely professional. "We are not seeking revenge. We are seeking behavioral correction through financial pressure. We let the structure do the punishing." "Exactly. And one last detail, Mr. Calloway. The old pickup truck Viviana told me she sold to a nameless salvage yard for a pittance? It was also secretly transferred into a separate LLC owned by Silas. I want that LLC transferred immediately to my niece, Petra Vance. Petra has always been kind, loyal, and struggling to run her small Hearthstone oven bakery. I want her to receive the truck tomorrow morning, fully registered and clean, as a small, untainted reward for her character. This is the only preemptive act of justice I will allow. The rest is purely for Viviana's education." Calloway picked up his phone, his efficiency already evident in his movements. "I'll have the internal deed transfer executed by the end of the day, Mrs. Brooks, and I will personally oversee the truck transfer to Petra Vance. The game, as you call it, is officially underway. Viviana Brooks is flying toward a very expensive, very painful lesson." I rose, feeling a strength and clarity I hadn't known since Silas passed. This was not the end of my quiet life. It was the beginning of my strategic purpose. Viviana and Dorian's opulent crash landing into their European dream began almost immediately, tracked with cold, relentless precision by Mr. Calloway's financial intelligence team, operating discreetly through a network of Silas's ghost investment firms. The initial expense reports from Milan were exactly as predicted, a spectacular, vulgar display of excess funded by their ill-gotten gains. The first 48 hours saw them spend nearly $30,000, not on business, but on a grossly oversized hotel suite, designer clothing that screamed new money, and an exclusive private tour of the Duomo, followed by a $7,000 dinner where they bought the most expensive champagne the restaurant offered. Their supposed business meetings were farcical, easily debunked by Calloway's local contacts. Viviana, accustomed to selling overpriced, highly decorated cupcakes, found the sophisticated European investors unimpressed by her business model, which lacked originality and scalability. They were not funding a European expansion. They were funding an expensive, desperate vanity tour, attempting to parlay a small, local bakery concept into international prestige using stolen capital. The $440,000 they had misappropriated was burning a hole in their accounts at a rate that suggested panic rather than planning. Meanwhile, back home, the quiet wheels of my corrective justice were turning. Petra, my loyal niece, received the old, impeccably maintained Silas pickup truck the very next day. She called me, her voice trembling with shock and overwhelming gratitude. "Aunt Serafina, I can't believe it. The man just dropped off the keys and the papers. He said it was a gift from an anonymous benefactor, completely taxed and registered to my business, the Hearthstone Oven. It's the perfect size for market deliveries. I was using my tiny old sedan. Thank you. Thank you and Uncle Silas." The genuine, unadulterated joy in her voice was a tonic to my soul, a small, perfect counterweight to the venomous greed of my daughter. Petra immediately put the truck to good use, expanding her delivery radius and increasing her capacity for the local farmers' market. The deserving were quietly prospering, funded by the generosity of a man who knew exactly where to place his bets. My next strategic move was the delivery of the lease non-renewal notice to the Velvet Whisk. Callaway's property management subsidiary, a bland, nameless entity, sent the certified letter to the bakery's business address. The notice informed Viviana that, upon her return, the property could only be occupied on a month-to-month basis, with the 50% rent increase taking effect immediately. This letter was timed to arrive exactly when she did, ensuring she would walk directly from her delusional European conquest into a terrifying financial reality. It was a pressure valve designed to tighten the moment she sought refuge in her one remaining source of identity: her business. The reports from Europe grew increasingly erratic and concerning. Viviana and Dorian had burned through nearly half of the funds in 2 weeks. They moved from Milan to the French Riviera, shifting their focus from investment to high-stakes gambling and jewelry purchases. This was the classic trajectory of thieves running from the reality of their failure, converting liquid cash into easily concealable, although ultimately disposable, status symbols. Dorian's spending, in particular, was reckless and massive, often involving late-night wire transfers to undisclosed accounts, a fact that Callaway's team noted with grim satisfaction, knowing this created a separate, traceable thread of fraud. The cracks in their relationship were beginning to show through the expense reports: separate tabs at different bars, expensive gifts purchased only for themselves, and a general cessation of the joint luxury purchases that had characterized their early days. The money was running out, and the mutual blame was starting to surface. Callaway prepared the legal documentation for the next critical step: the official legal demand from the Dentons, the buyers of the Cedar Haven. Since Aegis Crest had already quietly nullified the sale and secured the property, the Dentons were to be immediately reimbursed their full $500,000, plus a generous interest fee by Aegis Crest's legal team. This was done anonymously and with such speed that their anger quickly pivoted from the title defect to the fraudulent sellers, Viviana and Dorian. The Dentons' lawyer, acting on their behalf, immediately sent a demand letter to Viviana and Dorian's last known corporate account, requesting the immediate return of the $500,000, citing Viviana's deliberate fraud and the legal costs incurred. This demand, framed as a precursor to an $800,000 civil suit, was designed to be waiting in their inbox upon their arrival home, a legal depth charge that would confirm their total ruin. 2 days later, the final, definitive report arrived from Europe. Viviana and Dorian had abruptly checked out of their third hotel in Florence, leaving a scattering of newly purchased, but already cheap-looking, accessories behind. They had purchased separate one-way economy tickets back to our city, landing in less than 24 hours. The European dream was over, shattered by greed, incompetence, and the unstoppable momentum of Silas's foresight. The two of them were returning, broke, defeated, and completely oblivious to the legal and financial fortress that was about to collapse upon their heads. I instructed Callaway to make the final preparations. The stage was set for the ultimate lesson. The silence in my apartment felt profound, the calm before the storm. I spent the day before Viviana's return reviewing the detailed legal and financial dossiers Mr. Callaway had compiled. The key to Silas's plan was the synchronicity of the consequences. Viviana needed to be financially eviscerated from all directions simultaneously, leaving her with no refuge, no legal defense, and no partner to share the blame. She was landing in less than 12 hours, carrying nothing but a suitcase full of depreciating assets and a heart full of false pride. Callaway's team confirmed that the official legal demand from the Dentons, the $500,000 repayment plus litigation costs, totaling nearly $800,000, was sitting in her corporate email account, along with the notice of her bakery's lease termination and the impossible rental increase. The legal vice was fully tightened. My attention then focused on the final, crucial point of leverage: her luxury condo. Like the bakery building, the entire 20-story structure where Viviana and Dorian maintained their primary residence was secretly owned by a subsidiary of Aegis Crest Holdings. They, too, were merely renters, a fact they entirely overlooked in their arrogance, believing they were condo owners. Callaway's property management arm, using a separate equally anonymous LLC, delivered the third notice: a 3-day eviction warning citing repeated breaches of the condo association agreement, loud noise complaints, unauthorized modifications to their balcony, and, most critically, a notice of late maintenance fees that our own financial team had intentionally delayed processing to create the necessary breach. This notice was targeted at Dorian, as he was the primary signatory on the lease, a deliberate tactic to fracture their crumbling partnership even further. The combined weight of these 3 documents, the $800,000 legal debt, the loss of her business security, and the imminent loss of her home, was calculated to induce absolute immediate panic. Viviana and Dorian landed late that evening, slipping back into the city with the same lack of fanfare that marked their departure. Petra, who had been alerted by me to the time of their arrival, saw them. They were arguing violently at the baggage claim, Dorian looking disheveled and agitated, Viviana tearful but sharp-tongued. They caught a taxi, not back to their high-rise, but to a cheap roadside motel, a clear indication that Dorian was already fleeing the scene. Or perhaps they couldn't risk the embarrassment of their lavish apartment building just yet. The storm broke the following morning. The first event was the inevitable explosion between the couple. Dorian, waking up to the eviction notice and the massive legal demand from the Dentons, which far exceeded the amount they had stolen, abandoned ship. He drained the last $50,000 from their joint account, took the easily liquidated jewelry, and vanished, leaving Viviana with a short, cold text message. "It's over. Deal with your mother and your legal mess. I'm gone." Callaway's surveillance confirmed he boarded a flight to the Caribbean, using the money to finance his escape. Viviana was left alone, bankrupt, legally liable for $800,000, and hours away from losing her home. She went straight to the Velvet Whisk. Desperate to find some solvency, there she found the notices from the anonymous property management company. The 50% rent increase, the month-to-month tenancy, and the final crushing warning: pay up immediately or face eviction. Her staff, sensing the inevitable collapse, were already looking for other work. The business, her last bastion of pride, was effectively dead. It was late that afternoon when she finally showed up at my modest apartment. She didn't call, she didn't text. She simply arrived, pounding on the door with a frantic, desperate rhythm. I opened it, my face calm, neutral, revealing none of the turmoil I felt watching my own child in such genuine distress. She stumbled in, a wreck of her former self, wearing the cheap clothes she had traveled back in, her face streaked with tears and exhaustion. Her self-pity was still immense, but for the first time, it was underscored by absolute, genuine terror. "Mom, you have to help me! It's all a conspiracy! The Dentons are lying! Dorian left me! He took everything! And this Aegis company is kicking me out of my condo and ruining my business! I need the money I gave you! I need that $60,000 to hold off the lawyers! You can't just let me be destroyed!" She didn't seek absolution. She sought a transaction. She still saw me only as a source of funds, a means to an end. I let her collapse into a chair, letting the storm of her panic wash over her. When she finally paused, panting, I spoke, my voice low and steady. "Viviana, I kept the $60,000 you deposited. I haven't touched it. It's still in the account you put it in. But that money, even if I gave it to you, wouldn't solve an $800,000 debt. These consequences are not a conspiracy. They are the direct, quantifiable result of your own choices. You committed fraud, you lied, and you tried to impoverish your own mother. You made your bed with greed, and now you must lie in the mess you created. Dorian is gone. Your home is gone, and your business is financially ruined. You have nowhere to go." I let the hard truth settle. "You can stay here, but only under my conditions. You will get a job immediately, a real job. Honest, physical labor. You will work to start paying back your debt. You will contribute to this household, and you will treat me with respect. I have a contact, a woman named Beatrice, who runs a commercial cleaning service. Minimum wage, full-time hours, physically demanding. Take it or leave it. You have run out of options, Viviana." The sheer horror on her face at the mention of cleaning floors was cinematic, but the terror of total destitution won out. She had nothing. She swallowed her pride, a monumental effort that shook her whole frame. "Fine," she whispered, defeated. "I'll take the job. Just tell me what time to be there tomorrow." The fall was complete. The necessary, painful education had begun. The initial phase of Viviana's education, her sudden immersion into the grueling reality of minimum wage labor, was a harsh, unrelenting grind. Her new workplace, Sparkle and Shine Commercial Cleaning, run by the no-nonsense but kind-hearted Beatrice, was a million miles away from the gilded, perfumed elegance of the Velvet Whisk. Beatrice, who had been briefed by Mr. Calloway, anonymously of course, as a friend of a client, understood the assignment perfectly. Treat Viviana as a worker in desperate need of discipline and respect for honest effort. The work was immediate and brutal. Viviana, whose soft hands were accustomed only to kneading refined dough and swiping credit cards, was now forced to scrub floors in industrial warehouses, sanitize public restrooms, and haul heavy bins of refuse. The long hours, the physical exhaustion, and the profound lack of respect from the world she now inhabited were a constant daily humiliation. She came home every evening smelling faintly of bleach and sweat, her body aching, her spirit crushed. She barely spoke, often eating a small, quiet dinner, before collapsing into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. I maintained my neutral, unyielding stance. I offered no sympathy, made no demands beyond basic respect, and never asked about her day. I simply existed as the quiet authority in the small, unassuming apartment that now represented her entire world. The lack of a dramatic response from me, no shouting, no triumphant gloating, was, I knew, the deepest cut of all. It forced her to confront her own shame in isolation, without the distraction of a counter-argument. Simultaneously, the pressure on the Velvet Whisk was relentless. Viviana, emotionally drained and physically exhausted from the cleaning job, could only dedicate a few late-night hours to her bakery. The 50% rent increase, the month-to-month instability, and the looming $800,000 legal debt, which Calloway insured, remained a constant, active threat, paralyzed her ability to make any strategic business decisions. The bakery's sales plummeted. She had to let go of her most expensive staff, desperately trying to keep the lights on and avoid the final eviction notice from Aegis Crest's property manager. The business, her last link to her old identity, was slowly and visibly dying, a necessary consequence that had to play out completely. The contrast with Petra Vance was staggering. Petra's Hearthstone oven was thriving, buoyed by the reliability of the Silas-gifted pickup truck and Petra's unwavering dedication to quality and service. Petra frequently called me, sharing small, honest victories, a constant, beautiful reminder that the true inheritance lay in character, not cash. She occasionally brought over fresh bread, always thanking me for my anonymous friend's incredible generosity. This small, thriving enterprise, built on integrity and hard work, stood as a silent, powerful reproach to Viviana's crumbling vanity project. About a month into her new life, the first signs of genuine change began to emerge. Viviana came home one evening, not sulking, but reflective. She sat at the kitchen table, her cleaning uniform still slightly damp, and watched me quietly preparing a simple meal. She didn't immediately launch into a complaint. Instead, she spoke in a low, tired voice. "Mom?" she started, her tone flat, honest. "I spent 3 hours today cleaning the floors of a school cafeteria. I realized I saw the woman who runs the kitchen. She works 2 jobs, takes the bus, and she was singing. Just simple, quiet songs while she cooked. She was happier than I have been in 5 years of owning a luxury bakery. I don't understand how she can be happy when she has nothing." This was the breakthrough. The realization that value and contentment are not commodities. She was finally seeing the dignity in honest physical labor and the profound emptiness of her former materialistic life. I continued to stir the pot, my expression remaining neutral. But inside, I felt a deep, profound sense of relief. She is happy, Viviana, because she earned her peace. She knows the value of every dollar she has. You need to find that same worth in your work. A few weeks later, the physical strain of the job began to ease, replaced by a quiet discipline. She started ironing her uniform, treating her work with a quiet respect. She even began to anticipate my needs around the apartment, clearing the table, loading the dishwasher. Small, unprompted acts of service that spoke volumes about her changing heart. The humiliation was hardening into resilience, the self-pity into self-awareness. I knew the moment for the final, devastating, and redeeming truth was approaching. She had almost nothing left to lose, but she had gained everything that truly mattered: her character. I needed to let the final piece of her old life, the velvet whisk, fall away entirely to ensure her surrender was complete and genuine. Before revealing the magnitude of Silas's foresight and her own ultimate financial security, the education was nearly complete. 2 more months passed, solidifying the remarkable shift in Viviana's character. The initial shock of physical labor had given way to a quiet, almost meditative rhythm. Her body was leaner, her face tired but clear, and the perpetual brittle anxiety that had defined her previous life was replaced by a deep, bone-weary sense of earned peace. She still worked diligently for Beatrice at Sparkle and Shine, and the minimum wage she earned went entirely toward her contribution to the household expenses. Money I would quietly return to her account later, ensuring the lesson of self-sufficiency was internal and not transactional. The physical act of cleaning had become a form of therapy, a ritual that stripped away her pretense and forced her to confront her reality without distraction. She spoke of Beatrice with genuine admiration, seeing her not as a subordinate, but as a mentor in practical life. The greatest pressure remained on the velvet whisk. Viviana, stretched thin between the demands of her cleaning job and the crushing reality of the bakery's finances, was facing imminent collapse. The high rent, the looming legal debt, and her inability to properly manage the business meant she was rapidly approaching zero. The anonymous notices from Aegis Crest's property management team grew increasingly urgent, culminating in a final, 7-day eviction warning for non-payment. This was the precise moment I had been waiting for. The final, absolute surrender of her former identity. She came home one Tuesday evening, not with a burst of frantic energy, but with a quiet, devastating finality. She carried a single, small cardboard box containing a few personal items from the bakery, a favorite whisk, a framed photo of her and Dorian from a happier time, which she quickly and definitively tossed into the recycling bin. She sat down, her hands resting heavily on the table, and looked at me, her eyes red but remarkably dry. "It's over, Mom," she stated, her voice flat, the single word ringing with the sound of total defeat. "I spoke to the manager this morning. I told her to start liquidating the last of the assets. We can't pay the new rent, and honestly, even if I could, I don't have the energy. The dream was built on smoke and mirrors. I owe the Dentons $800,000. I have no business, and I have nothing left but this cleaning job. I'm starting over at the absolute bottom, and I realize now I deserve this. Every single bit of it." This was the pivotal moment, the complete acceptance of responsibility, free from any attempt to ask for help or shift the blame. Her humility was total and genuine. She had faced the full, crushing weight of her consequences, and had survived, not by escaping them, but by enduring them. The self-pity was gone, replaced by a clear, cold assessment of her own failings. I stood up, walked to the armoire, and retrieved the small, oiled canvas bag containing the Aegis Crest Holdings binder and the fireproof strongbox that held the original documents of the fraud. I placed the box on the kitchen table between us. The heavy, metallic clang of the box landing was the loudest sound in the room. "Viviana?" I said, my voice finally softening. "Shedding the hard shell of my performance. You have just proven to me and to your father that you have earned the right to survive. You chose discipline over desperation. You chose dignity over your last shred of pride. And now, the lesson is over. It is time for you to know the truth about the man you thought was just a retired transit supervisor and the nature of the consequence you have been facing." I opened the box and slid the thick, unmarked binder across the table. "This is the life your father actually led. He created this, not to punish you, but to protect me, and more importantly, to save you from your own greed. He knew this moment would come. He prepared for it, meticulously, brilliantly, his entire life." Viviana's hands shook as she opened the binder, her eyes wide with bewilderment, tracing the name Aegis Crest Holdings, LLC. The truth of the lake house, the transfer date predating her injunction, the ownership of the commercial building where her bakery stood, all of it hit her like a physical blow. The name of the anonymous property management company, the one that had been relentlessly squeezing her, was revealed as a subsidiary of her own mother's holding company. She realized the villain was me, the puppet master was her late father, and the entire devastating sequence of events was a planned, loving, and tactical intervention. She finally reached the true corporate deed of the condo building. Aegis Crest Holdings, sole owner. She had been evicted from a home I secretly owned. She dropped the binder, her face white with shock, the silence filled only by her ragged breath. "Mom, you own everything? The building? The whole company? You were the ones kicking me out? You orchestrated this entire collapse? What about the Dentons? The $800,000 legal debt? Is that real?" I reached into the strongbox and pulled out two things. The certified legal receipt showing Aegis Crest had fully reimbursed the Dentons $500,000 months ago, turning their claim into a fraudulent debt she didn't owe, and the uncashed check for $60,000, the meager sum she had left me. The debt is real only because you believed it was real, Viviana. The moment you proved your character, the debt ceased to matter. Your father and I saved you, not by giving you money to continue your mistakes, but by allowing you to lose everything so you could discover the true strength inside you. You found your worth in that sparkle and shine uniform, and that is a worth no money can buy. I then presented the final document, a simple contract. I will settle the remaining legal fees, clear any tax liabilities, and pay off your personal debts. The Cedar Haven is now yours, freely and clearly. The Velvet Whisk gets a new 10-year lease at an affordable rate. But the conditions remain. 1 more year of part-time work at Sparkle and Shine to honor the dignity of that labor. And every penny you earn, there must be used to rebuild your business ethically. Do you accept the terms of your father's redemption? Viviana didn't speak. She simply rose and wrapped me in a tight, desperate embrace. The true, honest embrace of a daughter finally saved. The weight of the truth, once revealed, acted not as a source of anger, but as a profound catalyst for accelerated healing. Viviana's shock quickly transformed into a deep, humbling sense of gratitude and a quiet, formidable determination to prove her father's and my faith in her. She did not immediately rush to claim her fortune or demand to be reinstated to a life of luxury. Instead, her first action was to seek out the people she had wronged. She called Mr. Calloway and apologized profusely for her initial arrogant demands, expressing awe at the quiet complexity of Silas's legal planning. She then reached out to the former staff of the Velvet Whisk, admitting her failures and asking humbly for a second chance to earn their respect. She paid off their outstanding wages and offered them the first opportunities to return to the bakery under the new, restructured, ethical model she was planning. The change in her was evident in every action. She approached the task of rebuilding the Velvet Whisk with the same meticulous, humble dedication she had applied to scrubbing floors. The new business plan was entirely devoid of the previous vanity. She simplified the menu, focusing on quality ingredients and honest pricing. She established a fair, profit-sharing scheme for her returning employees. The physical space of the bakery, no longer burdened by the extortionate rent, was scaled down and renovated to be efficient and functional, reflecting a new commitment to substance over show. The difference was palpable. The atmosphere at the Velvet Whisk shifted from one of nervous pretense to quiet, focused productivity. Her mandatory part-time work at Sparkle and Shine transitioned from a punishment to a valued discipline. She continued to work her shifts, not as an obligation, but as a commitment to the person she had become. Her relationship with Beatrice evolved into a genuine friendship. Beatrice, a woman who only respected earned honesty, became a trusted confidant, offering pragmatic advice that Viviana now accepted without a trace of condescension. She realized that the people she had once dismissed as service staff were, in fact, the most resilient, hardworking, and grounded individuals she knew. This forced interaction across social and economic lines proved to be the most critical component of her spiritual rehabilitation. The next step in her journey was the final, formal severing of her past destructive ties. She completed the divorce proceedings against Dorian Marsh. He attempted a few desperate calls, demanding a portion of the newly revealed, though largely inaccessible, Silas estate. But Mr. Calloway's swift legal action, combined with the irrefutable evidence of Dorian's abandonment and theft of the remaining cash, quickly silenced him. Viviana showed zero malice. She simply wanted the corrosive influence of his greed removed from her life entirely. With Dorian gone and her professional life on a stable foundation, she focused on her relationship with me. We began the difficult, necessary conversations about the past. I explained the pain of letting her fall, the absolute necessity of the deception, and the depth of Silas's enduring protective love. She, in turn, expressed the terrifying isolation she felt in the weeks after her return and the profound realization that her value was tied entirely to her credit score, not her character. We rebuilt our bond not on the easy comfort of shared wealth, but on the hard-earned honesty of shared struggle. The Cedar Haven was the final piece of reconciliation. I formally transferred the deed to Viviana. She accepted it with solemn gratitude, but she made a surprising, deeply moving decision. She transferred the deed immediately into a new, small, familial trust, making me, Serafina Vance, the primary lifetime beneficiary. "Mom," she explained, her voice thick with emotion, "the house is yours." "It's the heart of our family, and I want you to know it is absolutely secure, for you, forever. I will be the custodian, the one who takes care of it, but it is your sanctuary. I need to earn the right to simply use it, not own it." This complete rejection of immediate, unearned ownership was the ultimate proof of her transformation. The wealth, the legal battles, the deception, all of it had led to this single, beautiful, selfless act. Silas's plan had not just succeeded, it had yielded a dividend of character far beyond what I had dared to hope for. We began spending every other weekend at the Cedar Haven, not retreating from the world, but retreating into the warmth of our authentic relationship, the house now an absolute fortress of love and trust, immune to any future betrayal. The years that followed the Great Reckoning were defined by a quiet, profound stability, a stark contrast to the frantic chaos that had preceded them. Viviana's dedication to her reformed business, the Velvet Whisk, became an object lesson in ethical entrepreneurship. She focused relentlessly on quality, fairness to her employees, and sustainable local sourcing, transforming the bakery from a vanity project into a respected, thriving institution in the community. The pressure had created a diamond. She was sharp, disciplined, and genuinely humble. Her past arrogance now channeled into a fierce protection of integrity. She consistently exceeded the conditions I had set. The mandatory part-time work at Sparkle and Shine lasted well beyond the required year, becoming a habit she valued, and she meticulously reinvested every dollar of those minimum wage earnings, a personal principle that underscored her new work ethic. The true measure of her transformation, however, lay in her relationship with Petra Vance, my loyal niece. Viviana approached Petra not as a cousin, but as a business colleague she profoundly respected. She used the resources of her now stable business to support the Hearthstone oven, providing Petra with discounted bulk ingredient purchasing and sharing marketing insights, an act of genuine, selfless support. The two cousins, once separated by Viviana's haughty disdain, were now true friends and professional partners, their success intertwined and mutually reinforcing. This alliance between the two women was perhaps the most beautiful and unforeseen dividend of Silas's foresight. My own life found a deep, satisfying purpose in the management of the Aegis Crest Holdings portfolio and the creation of the Silas Brooks Foundation for Entrepreneurial Integrity. We liquidated several minor, less sentimental properties within the Aegis portfolio and used the proceeds to establish the foundation, which was dedicated to providing capital and mentorship to small business owners facing unforeseen ethical or financial crises, providing a second chance for those willing to commit to absolute transparency. I worked tirelessly with Mr. Calloway, ensuring the foundation's work remained discreet and focused entirely on the positive impact on people's lives, maintaining the anonymous, benevolent shadow cast by Silas's quiet wealth. The full extent of the Aegis fortune remained our carefully guarded secret, ensuring that the foundation's impact and Viviana's success were never tainted by the corrosive influence of inherited billions. I deliberately kept my lifestyle simple, residing in the same modest apartment, a conscious choice to maintain the grounded, unmaterialistic existence that had allowed me to see and execute Silas's vision clearly. Viviana became a mother during this period, welcoming her first child, a boy she, with tears of gratitude, named Silas Jr. Her approach to motherhood was marked by a fierce commitment to teaching her son the value of earned effort, simplicity, and respect for all labor, a stark contrast to the entitled upbringing she herself had received. She often told me, in quiet moments, that she was grateful her son would never know the person she used to be. The Cedar Haven became the centerpiece of our family life. Hosting multi-generational gatherings, its serene beauty now completely free of the stain of betrayal. It was there, watching Viviana teach Silas Jr. how to skip stones on the lake, that I felt the ultimate peace. My daughter, the woman who had tried to discard me and steal our past, was now a woman of genuine substance, teaching her son the very values she had to learn the hardest way possible. On her 40th birthday, Viviana gave me a gift, a small hand-painted portrait of the old pickup truck, the one Silas had gifted to Petra. "It's a portrait of true legacy, Mom," she said, her eyes shining with sincerity. "The truck that went to the right person, the house that came back to the person who deserved it, the kindness that mattered. That's the real fortune Dad left us." I realized then that the transformation was absolute. The cold, brutal chapter that began with the mercenary phone call, "Mom, I sold your beach house. We leave tomorrow," was now entirely closed, replaced by a beautiful, enduring family narrative built on truth, humility, and the quiet, absolute certainty that love sometimes requires the most difficult of lessons. The unfolding years granted me, Serafina, the unique privilege of witnessing the full fruition of Silas's extraordinary plan. My daughter, Viviana, continued her ascent as an ethical leader. She channeled the lessons learned at Sparkle and Shine into her community engagement, establishing a nonprofit initiative dedicated to providing job training and life skills to women re-entering the workforce. Her story, subtly hinted at but never explicitly detailed in public, gave her a powerful, relatable platform. She often spoke about the necessity of hitting rock bottom to truly appreciate the foundation of solid ground, a message that resonated deeply with her audience. Her personal life with Dorian's replacement, a kind and stable architect named Graham, who eventually became her second husband, was a testament to the difference between superficial attraction and authentic compatibility. Graham, like Thomas in the original story, was entirely impressed by her resilience, her dedication, and her quiet refusal to live a life of excess, oblivious to the immense, managed wealth that secretly underpinned my world. My work with the Silas Brooks Foundation for Entrepreneurial Integrity became my main source of joy and purpose. Mr. Calloway and I meticulously governed the Aegis Crest Holdings portfolio, ensuring its principal remained untouched, and its yield was deployed exclusively for philanthropic and integrity-based investment. We expanded the foundation's reach, focusing on providing redemption capital to individuals who had faced financial ruin due not to malice, but to profound, correctable mistakes. This work, I realized, was the purest form of my love for Silas, a way to perpetuate his silent, moral force. The foundation was designed to be a perpetual motion machine of second chances, a system built on the philosophy that character is a skill that can be developed, often requiring a catalyst of hardship. The family continued to grow. Viviana and Graham welcomed a daughter, Vance, named in honor of my own family name, a gesture that touched me deeply, signifying her full embrace of the integrity and stability I represented. The 3 grandchildren, Silas Jr., Clara, and little Vance, grew up together, their lives intertwined with those of Petra's children. Their childhood was spent at the Cedar Haven, learning the values of nature, simple joys, and the importance of legacy over luxury. It was a beautiful, unpretentious upbringing. Precisely the kind of childhood Silas and I had always wanted for Viviana, but which her own ambition had initially precluded. One quiet afternoon, as I was reviewing the Foundation's annual report with Mr. Calloway, I made a critical decision regarding the long-term transfer of power. I was now 83, and while active, I needed to ensure the smooth, continuous operation of the Aegis Crest Empire. I instructed Calloway to draft the final, most complex legal document, the Brooks-Vance Legacy Covenant. This covenant was designed to make the wealth virtually inaccessible to future generations, transferring all significant principal and ownership of the holding company's assets into a perpetual, unassailable trust, whose sole beneficiary was the Silas Brooks Foundation. The trust structure ensured that the wealth would continue to fund philanthropy forever, with only a small, tightly controlled stipend available to direct descendants who met strict moral and financial criteria, namely, 0 personal debt, verifiable community service, and continuous professional employment for at least 5 years. This structure was the ultimate expression of Silas's philosophy. The wealth was a tool for societal good, not a family entitlement. I presented this entire finalized structure to Viviana and Graham. The full scale of the Aegis Crest fortune, the millions dedicated to the foundation, and the minimal conditional access afforded to their children left them deeply reflective. Viviana, the woman who had once demanded 25% of a house sale, now looked at the vast, untouchable legacy with profound relief. "Dad protected them, Mom," she whispered, referring to her children. "He made sure they would have to earn their own way, just like I had to. This is the greatest gift you could give them." Graham, her husband, simply affirmed his support, volunteering his architectural firm's services pro bono to assist the foundation in building vocational centers. The fear that unearned wealth might poison the integrity of the next generation was entirely absolved. I knew that this final act, the sealing of the fortune into a vessel of perpetual good, was the true conclusion of the story. The entire dramatic saga, the betrayal, the fall, the tough love, and the quiet reveal, had culminated not in a distribution of wealth, but in the institutionalization of character. The title of our story, "Mom, I Sold Your Beach House. We Leave Tomorrow." But she had no idea what was really happening, now served as a powerful reminder that the greatest battles are often fought not in the courts, but in the quiet chambers of the human heart, and that true legacy is measured in moral fiber, not financial figures. The decade that followed the establishment of the Brooks-Vance Legacy Covenant cemented the serene continuation of Silas's moral legacy. I, Serafina, transitioned into a beloved, respected elder statesman of the philanthropic world, though my identity as the silent force behind Aegis Crest Holdings remained known only to Mr. Calloway and a small, trusted circle of foundation executives. Viviana's commitment to the Silas Brooks Foundation grew, becoming the central focus of her professional life. She eventually stepped away from the active management of her teaching kitchen, which she passed to a deserving young protege, to dedicate herself fully to the Foundation's mentorship programs. Her personal story of redemption, now shared with a wider audience, though still carefully edited to omit the magnitude of my wealth, became a profound source of inspiration. She taught entrepreneurs not just financial literacy, but emotional integrity, constantly emphasizing the principle that success without character is merely a temporary loan. Her former cleaning boss, Beatrice, was a regular fixture at foundation events, often speaking about the dignity of honest work, a powerful, unassuming presence that reminded everyone of the humble origins of Viviana's transformation. The family continued to flourish, anchored by the unshakable stability of Viviana and Graham's marriage and the close bond between the cousins. Petra Vance's Hearthstone oven was now a regional success, its values mirroring those of the foundation: quality, transparency, and deep community involvement. Petra often joked that the old Silas pickup truck, now lovingly maintained and only used for special events, was the cornerstone of her brand, a symbol of the integrity that had helped her grow. The symmetry between the two cousins, one building from humble beginnings, the other rebuilding from spectacular ruin, was a beautiful, living testament to the different paths to earned success. My life remained simple, but deeply fulfilling. I still resided in the modest apartment, occasionally visited by my grandchildren, who knew their grandmother as an intelligent, unpretentious woman with a lot of interesting, old stories. They were being raised entirely outside the orbit of the vast fortune that legally existed to serve them, but was intentionally structured to deny them easy access. They understood that the lake house, the Cedar Haven, was a cherished family space, a repository of memory, not an asset to be leveraged. This generational integrity, I knew, was the greatest triumph of Silas's plan. One afternoon, a surprising package arrived at my apartment. It was from Dorian Marsh, Viviana's ex-husband, a pathetic, desperate attempt to re-enter our lives. He had included a clipping from an obscure business journal mentioning the rapid growth of the Silas Brooks Foundation, and included a rambling letter suggesting that since the foundation bore Silas's name, he, as Silas's former son-in-law, was entitled to some sort of severance or share of the family's quiet wealth. The letter was a final, stark reminder of the corrosive nature of entitlement, the antithesis of everything Viviana had become. I didn't share the letter with Viviana. There was no need to pollute her present peace with the desperation of her past. Instead, I sent the package directly to Mr. Calloway. He handled the matter with his usual surgical precision, dispatching a short, firm letter from the Foundation's legal counsel stating that Mr. Marsh had no legal claim to the Foundation's charitable assets, which were permanently protected by the Brooks-Vance Legacy Covenant. The silence that followed was definitive and final. I realized then that the most significant act of my own stewardship was not the initial intervention, but the creation of the covenant. By ensuring the wealth would perpetuate good works and demand integrity from any future descendant, I had ensured that the painful lesson Viviana endured would never need to be repeated. The wealth, the ultimate temptation, was removed from the arena of human fallibility. The story, which began with the dramatic self-serving words, "Mom, I sold your beach house. We leave tomorrow," had evolved from a personal tragedy into an institutionalized good. I felt a quiet, profound sense of completion, knowing that the purpose Silas had entrusted to me had been fully realized. The legacy was secure, the family was redeemed, and the future generations were protected, not by the promise of riches, but by the necessity of effort. As my 90s approached, the continuity of the Brooks-Vance Legacy Covenant became my final, unwavering focus. I, Serafina, spent my remaining active years ensuring the Foundation's leadership was secure and that Mr. Calloway, had all the necessary institutional knowledge to manage Aegis Crest Holdings in perpetuity long after I was gone. The transition of leadership within the foundation was smooth, driven by a shared ethical commitment. Viviana was a natural choice for a leading governance role, her character and lived experience making her the most authentic and respected voice on the board. She was fiercely protective of the foundation's core mission, maintaining the policy of anonymity for all beneficiaries and demanding absolute transparency in its operations. Her life had become a singular, powerful statement about the importance of moral accountability. The Cedar Haven remained the vibrant heart of the family, the site of countless holiday gatherings and summer retreats. It was here, surrounded by the laughter of my great-grandchildren, the children of Silas Jr. and Clara, that I felt the most profound connection to the past and the most comforting certainty about the future. The house, once the object of a calculated betrayal, was now a quiet monument to earned love. It was a beautiful place where generations mingled, all completely unaware of the precise legal and financial gymnastics that had saved it, and them, from the corrosive impact of greed. The only person outside of myself and Mr. Calloway who held a piece of the complex truth was Petra Vance, my niece, whose quiet integrity had been rewarded with the silent gift of Silas's truck and whose success stood as a parallel testament to the value of honest labor. Her children and Viviana's children grew up with an easy, honest kinship, a bond that transcended the old class divides that had briefly separated their mothers. One afternoon, while staying at the lake house with Viviana and the great-grandchildren, I decided to take a solitary walk down to the small wooden dock, the same one where Silas and I used to watch the sunrise. Viviana, sensing my reflective mood, followed me, sitting quietly beside me. I pulled out a small silver locket from beneath my blouse, the one Silas had given me on our first anniversary. I had worn it every day since. "Viviana," I said, handing the simple piece to her. "Your father gave me this a long time ago. He called it his secret promise to protect our family. He made it with his own hands." She held the locket, her eyes tracing the intricate, if slightly amateur engraving of our initials. "It's beautiful, Mom. I remember seeing a picture of it." I looked out at the tranquil water. "The real promise, my dear, was the foresight he built into our lives. He left me the tools, but you gave me the courage to use them the hard way. It hurt me to let you fall, Viviana. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, watching you suffer the consequences of your own character flaws. But seeing you now, seeing your beautiful family, and the good you are doing in the world, it was all worth it. We saved your soul, not your bank account." Viviana, now a mature, wise woman, nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know, Mom. I see it now. If you had just given me the money then, I would have lost it all and lost myself entirely. You and Dad didn't just leave me a fortune. You left me the roadmap to be a person worthy of a good life. I owe you more than I can ever repay, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life honoring that lesson." I smiled, a deep, contented smile. "You already have, my love. You already have." I had completed my final duty. The generational continuity of character was secure. The cold, dramatic chapter that began with the words, "Mom, I sold your beach house. We leave tomorrow." But she had no idea what was really happening, had reached its final, most satisfying conclusion. A life of integrity, built on a foundation of humility and earned love. The wealth remained a secret force for good, but the daughter I had back was the only true treasure. I knew I could rest, knowing I had been a faithful steward of Silas's love, The final chapter of my story is not one of dramatic action, but of quiet, profound legacy. I, Serafina, passed away peacefully in my sleep, a little after my 95th birthday, in the modest apartment I had shared with Silas, surrounded by the love of Viviana, Graham, and my 3 grandchildren. My final days were characterized by a deep, settled peace, knowing the full arc of Robert's plan had reached its perfect conclusion. The execution of the Brooks-Vance legacy covenant was seamless. Mr. Calloway, now an elderly but still formidable figure, managed the entire process. Viviana, now the most visible and active leader of the Silas Brooks Foundation, inherited the entirety of my personal, unencumbered assets, which were still deliberately modest, consisting of the apartment, a few investment accounts, and the physical possessions accumulated over a long, simple life. The entire Aegis Crest Holdings empire, the multi-million-dollar portfolio, the commercial buildings, and the vast investment funds were all legally and irrevocably transferred to the Perpetual Trust, ensuring that the wealth would forever serve the Foundation's charitable mission. The only personal asset that remained outside the Trust's purview, already transferred to Viviana years prior, was the Cedar Haven Lake House, which now represented the sentimental heart of the family, secured by her own choice into a protective, self-imposed family trust. The family, upon reviewing the final documents, understood completely. Viviana received the full, written details of the covenant, realizing that her children, Clara and Robert Jr., and little Vance, would benefit only if they demonstrated the same commitment to character, work, and ethical living that she had. The wealth was not an easy inheritance, but a perpetual ethical challenge, a safety net that could only be accessed through proven integrity. This final act of foresight cemented Viviana's profound respect for her father's wisdom and my difficult love. She fully embraced her role as the chief custodian of the foundation, dedicating herself to ensuring its continued success and the integrity of its mission. Petra Vance, my loyal niece, attended my funeral, driving the beautifully preserved old Silas pickup truck, a silent, powerful emblem of my quiet preference for honest loyalty over mercenary greed. Her success, built on simple, good values, stood as a constant, gentle counterpoint to the dramatic story of my daughter's redemption. The 2 cousins, united by their shared history, stood side by side, their bond unbreakable, a testament to the power of earned respect.